Hello and welcome back to Beyond the To-Do List, a podcast about productivity. I'm your host, Erik Fisher, and this week I'm excited to have back on the show Kendra Adachi. She's the New York Times bestselling author of The Lazy Genius Way, and she's got a brand new book out, The Plan. Manage your time like a lazy genius. We're going to talk about what a lazy genius is. If you are not familiar with her philosophy of doing things in a lazy genius way, one, you're going to love it. And two, we're going to talk about how most time management books leave you feeling inadequate. You're focusing on greatness and optimization and mastery. But what if you just want to get enough done or live simply or live your life without trying to be productive at every turn? Well, that's productive too. And she says so, and I agree with her. So if you're wanting to figure out how to have a better lens of your life about what matters to you in your current season and being adequate or thriving instead of striving, as we kind of put it in this conversation, in that season or in multiple seasons, this is the conversation and the book for you. So enjoy this conversation with Kendra Adachi. Well, this week, it is my privilege to welcome back to the show, Kendra Adachi. Kendra, welcome back to Beyond the To-Do List.
Thanks, Erik. It's good to be here.
I am thrilled to have you back. I knew, when you had come on the first time, you were doing your second book. And at that time, you were saying, yeah, I don't have any more books in me. So I thought, oh, okay, well, she's still always putting out a weekly show and they're always great. And some of those topics I'll just have to keep track of to have her back on. But then this book came out of nowhere and I thought, yeah, okay, all right. So you said no more books. Why did you come out? What led you to this one?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of authors probably at some point hit that I'm done with this. I'm not going to have any more books. It's almost like having kids or something where you're like, nope. We're done. This is enough. And then you have like 3 more after. I don't know. I really thought that my first book, The Lazy Genius Way, it's 13 principles that you can apply to really anything, based on your stage of life, your personality, your challenge. And it was so comprehensive that I really thought that would be it. The Lazy Genius Kitchen, is that applied to the kitchen? And we all have to like eat. So I just thought, well, there's nothing else to say, right? Because I really care about, for myself, I care about writing books that people read again. Like I really want to create almost like a reference. Like this is a handbook. I want to write handbooks. And not everybody does, and not everybody should, because I want to read books that are not that way sometimes. But that's what I really wanted. And as I started to just kind of pay attention to what my podcast audience and newsletter audience was resonating with, it was time management. That's the whole thing, right? It's like, how do we do this? How do we get our stuff done? And I was going to start making a course. I was going to do a time management course because like everybody was making courses.
Yes.
And I was like, wait a minute. Number one, I don't know how to make a course. Number two, I don't think my people like courses, but they do like books. Dang it. I got to write another book. It was kind of a comical thing. My agent laughed. She was like, yeah, famous last words, not going to write another book. And here we are. But when I started to get into it, I've said this in a couple places and it still sounds slightly dramatic, but it's still very true that this is the book I was supposed to write. Like this is the book that kind of galvanizes and kind of conflates my life experience, which my story is kind of a tough one. There's like a lot of trauma in it that kind of led me to this place of leaning on systems and planning and structure, and because it was a safety, it was a safe thing. So I'm also naturally good at systems. It's how I kind of look at life. And I'm a teacher. Like that's sort of what my job is now, is trying to make complicated things simpler. And then I've also gone to therapy and I've learned a lot about like, oh, wait a second, like this is not how we need to do things. And so it just felt, as I wrote this book, it was very embodied, for lack of a better word. I was just like, this is it. Like, this is what we need. This is what I need. This is what people like me need, who have a desire to get their stuff done, to live a good life. But there's something in the industry that's just not working. Like, what is it that's not working? Why do we always feel like we're behind? Why do we always feel like we're on the cusp of failing at all of this? And so as I dug into this book and kind of found it, it was like a light. It was like a lighthouse. It was the coolest thing to be like, oh, we did it. This is what this is. This is what we need. So that's very like metaphorical and intangible as an opening, but I'm excited to talk about the mechanics of it all. But I'm really glad I wrote another book.
Well, and I just remember, I don't remember how many years ago it was now that it was the cookbook. And oh my gosh, I just remembered the whole container sinking.
They fell in the ocean.
Yes.
Yeah, they fell in the ocean. It's all fine. We've recovered, but they did. All the copies of The Lazy Genius Kitchen fell into the ocean. Moment of silence. Thank you.
Yes. All right. Now that has passed. But that wasn't your first book. The first book was The Lazy Genius Way. And I was dumbfounded as to how I had not heard of you yet. And the cookbook, somebody reaching out about the cookbook was the way that I found out about you. And then I was like, oh, this is the tip of the iceberg. This is awesome. But I really latched on to The Lazy Genius Way and just loved that you were doing that already. You were breaking through, what is this all for? The traditional time management and productivity systems for people. Like, people were kind of, okay, it's like fad diets. In other words, productivity stuff had become kind of like fad diets. And I didn't see you saying what you were saying about being a lazy genius as one of those fads. It was this really refreshing take, or better yet, perspective. Since I know the phrase lazy genius is in the new book, it's called The Plan, Manage Your Time Like a Lazy Genius. Can we take a quick second and say, okay, what is a lazy genius?
Yeah, totally. So a lazy genius is someone who is a genius about the things that matter and lazy about the things that don't. And the important thing to remember about that is that every person gets to name what matters to them. You get to decide what matters. You get to decide where you're going to put your genius energy, the things in your life that you genuinely do really care about. Because most of the time, we live in this all or nothing culture. A lot of us are programmed to be like, well, you have to be good at everything, or like, just don't even try. Like, it's not even worth it. There's this give up, try hard pendulum swing that we do, and there's such a wide middle. Like, you can be so great at certain things and love them and care about them and invest your time and energy, and other things you're like, and no, thank you. Like, that's just normal life. That as the work has progressed over the 4 years since I wrote or released The Lazy Genius Way, one of a new layer to being a genius about the things that matter and lazy about the things that don't is it's not just what matters to you, it's what matters to you in the season of life that you're in. I just keep making life smaller and smaller for everyone in the best way. It's like, hey, we're starting really big here. Because it's overwhelming if I say to you, hey, what matters in your life, Erik? And you're like, wait, what? Like, that's an enormous question, right? It's an enormous question. But if I said to you, okay, what season of life are you in? And what are a couple of things that really matter right now in that season? That's easier to answer. It's not easy to answer maybe, but it's easier. And it also leads us to a place of being able to practically live where we are. So that is what a lazy genius is. And the Lazy Genius Way is 13 principles that kind of help you do that, help you be a genius about the things that matter and lazy about the things that don't. But the plan is it's like the Matrix pill, yes. We're like taking the pill and we're like, hey guys, this is all broken. We need a new way to see, everybody.
We need to read the code and see what's really there. And
that's right.
All of the other metaphors we could do with that. That's great. Yeah. So obviously the plan is informed by the lazy genius. Let's call it an ethos or a perspective. It's informed by that. So what led you? I mean, obviously it's not a course, although, in some ways it is in book form. Ways, yeah. It's a course in book form. It's for those that read or audiobooks, I guess.
That's right.
I mean, come on. You have so many podcast listeners. I'm sure they don't mind buying the audiobook and doing it that way. So who
Yeah.
cares? But anyways, but it's in that form. And so what I loved was you've got it broken out into 3 kind of sections, basically, of the principles, the strategies, and pep talks. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. I can't wait to dive into this a little bit more. And so why choose it that way? I mean, some people are like, why do you have to have pep talks in a productivity book?
That's right. Well, I don't know. Is anybody else exhausted and need someone to be like, hey, you're doing great. You're doing great. This is really hard and you're doing great. So as I got to the end, I didn't want to end on strategies. Like, we do need principles. We do need the first part of the book is the main part of the book. Like, if you read one of the 3 parts, it's that one. Read that one, because that's kind of that's the perspective shift. That's the framework to give you a new lens of how to see time management. But you still need like help, like practical help and strategies. So that's the second part. But I know my reader. I know the vibe of most time management book readers, and they love a good checklist. They love stuff to do. We all do. We love the practical things. And honestly, I did not want to end on practical things because that's not the point. Like, those are tools for different seasons. You're not going to practically plan your life the same way for the rest of your life. It is going to shift. It must shift. There are going to be things that need to change. But needing encouragement where we are, that felt like a kinder, like more soulful way to end a time management book that doesn't read like most time management books.
Totally get it. And it makes sense for it to be encouraging at the end. I mean, you right up front, you're talking about, okay, who are we? Why are we here? In fact, you say you are here. Let's get into that. What is the you are here?
Yeah. So, all right, there are three differences between the plan and between the majority of time management productivity books that people might read. The first difference is I'm a lady. That's the first one, because 93% of time management books are written by men. And it is not that men do not give us good information. Like, there's a lot of good in a lot of those books, but it is woefully incomplete, because in general, not exclusively or entirely, but in general, men are not carrying the invisible scaffolding of their homes in the same way that if they are in a male-female partnership, in the same way that their female partner might. Women just hold a lot because they're culturally expected to, because that's kind of how our society is set up in many ways. You know, like, the schools call the mom when the kid is sick, you know, like that's the number that's on file. Like, it's just how it goes. So there are a lot of pressures and expectations on women, but less support for them to do those things in general. And so I really wanted there to be a book that was written not necessarily for women, but with women in mind. You know, that felt really important to me. So that's one big difference. The second difference is the other books in general, they start with the future, right? They start with like, what do you want your life to look like in 20 years, 5 years, whatever, after you retire? And you set that goal, you name what that life looks like, and then you break down the steps to get you there. And now what you have is a plan, a new checklist that you must follow every day, because every day builds on the next day. You've given yourself a new job to get to this ideal future. Now, there is nothing wrong with future goals, knowing what you want your life to look like. None of that, none of it. But if that is where you begin, if that is the origin story of what your day's structure is supposed to be, if you have a day, which you will quite often, where the urgency of today interferes with the 10 things you're supposed to check off in order to move towards your goals, you will feel behind. You will constantly feel behind. And we do. So the plan, instead of starting from the future, it starts with today. Let's just be where we are today. What do we need today? What do we need today? Because today already has a lot. So let's be here. And then the third difference, this is the matrix one. Like, this is kind of the veil off the eyes thing. The industry, for the most part, and actually our country in many, many ways, The goal, the lens, the fuel of everything is some form of greatness. It is mastery of your time. It is optimizing your time. It is being great at whatever it is you're going to do. You're making the most of an opportunity, right? You're capitalizing on this thing. Like everything is about leveling up. That is also very exhausting. And I don't know that, I think that living that way it's been taught to us as the rule, but I think it's the exception. I think there are very few people who actually long to live where they're constantly striving. Like, I just don't know. I don't know a lot of people in my own life who are like, yeah, I can't wait to strive again today. I'm so pumped to try to be the best and have the best day ever. Like that's just, especially if you're a woman, that's really just not in the cards. So not because we don't have the capability of like doing great things, but like hormones are a real thing. There's a lot of stuff happening that we don't have control of in everyone's life. And so if you look at like potential chaos of any given day, and if you see that through the lens of greatness, then your chaos is a problem. And the whole goal is not to fix it, rather than be in it where you are, like just be there. So if those books are focused on greatness, if that's the goal, the goal of the plan is integration. It's not greatness, it's integration. It's being a person right now where you are, independent of your circumstances, seeking to be whole, honoring what your body is telling you, honoring whatever feelings are happening, honoring what you need right now. If we start from there, if we look at our lives through a lens of integration and we start with today, it really changes everything in the most beautiful, deep breath way. And weirdly, it helps you get more done because you're not so obsessed with like the snowball effect of everything has to build on itself. It's like, I don't even know what I want to do in 2 weeks. Like, please don't make me live every day based on what I wrote down in one of 7 planners that I bought last November that I want my life to look like in 20 years. Like, I just don't think that that is how most of us want to structure our life, but there's not been a framework for people who think that way. And so I wanted to make a very robust framework for those folks.
Yes. A very trite kind of version of a saying came to mind. We're so focused on the striving that we forget that we're so focused on striving, we forget to be thriving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know that's kind of like,
or just living.
Right.
Or even just living. Like I think that there is even a pressure of what thriving means. We might even have this vision in our head of what it means to thrive. And we live in a culture that tells us that thriving is like, you're doing really great at everything. You're knocking it out of the park. You're checking off your list. You're like working out at 5 and you're tending to all of these categories in your life with equal energy and equal success. And it's all building on itself in this way. And I think for me, I'm just saying for me, thriving for me is ending the day and being like, we're going to be kind. I'm not going to beat myself up for things that didn't happen. I'm not going to resent my husband because he loaded the dishwasher weird. I'm not going to, I just want to be present and see the good that is in front of me and within me. And to me, that's a day where I'm thriving, where I'm like emotionally aware. I'm present in what's going on and I'm not thrown about by my circumstances in some way and become disengaged from my life where it becomes a machine that I'm trying to fix, that I'm living in it, that I'm in it. So even that, and that's why PLAN is an acronym and the L in PLAN is live. That's why that's there. Like the whole point of all this is like, we just want to live our lives, just where we are, who we are right now without trying to manage the circumstances of them. And that's a hard message to sort of get your head around because it's just not anywhere else really. That's not the world that we live in.
Yeah, no, it's reaching. I mean, again, people listening to a podcast about productivity in whatever flavor is their version of whether it's this show or your show. I wouldn't even necessarily call your show a productivity show, but I sure get a lot of productivity insight out of it. That's for sure. I mean, even me saying the word thrive earlier, I thought to myself, or thriving, it made me think of that whole, it made me think of lazy geniusing things, because it's like, wait a sec. No, someone says, oh, how are you? Oh, someone said, I mean, think about that. If you were to go to somebody and you said to them, how are you doing? And they came out with the word, I'm thriving.
I'm thriving. Yeah.
You either one, think, okay, right off the bat, they're lying. They're covering, they've got a mask on. Or two, they are thinking that they've got every single thing covered in their, like it's all of the hats they wear. They feel like they're wearing them well enough. And thing is maybe there's not something necessarily wrong with that if they're going about it the way you're talking about, where it's you've picked, in other words, they say they're thriving because they've chosen to be a genius at certain things, and the other stuff they're lazy with, and they're guilt-free about it. So I don't know. That's my take, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's right. It's the words we use have a lot of power, and a lot of those words have been kind of commandeered by the productivity industry. And I don't know, they've just kind of, you used the word trite before. Like, I think a lot of it is just, there's not a lot of weight. There's not a lot of weight to the things that I experience in kind of traditional time management books. There are things that are helpful, they're helpful, like tips and hacks and stuff. But I'm just realizing that this lens of greatness is not one I want to look through, which kind of changes how I absorb that information from someone that is their lens, whether they've named it as such or not. So it's not bad. It's not that it's a bad lens. It's just one of them. But it's kind of been the only option for a long time. And so having an alternative way to look at it feels like a really good idea.
Yeah. You mentioned the acronym. Let's clear that up a little bit. Obviously L is live or living. And what does PLAN stand for?
Yeah. PLAN stands for prepare, live, adjust, and notice. So it's not just an acronym, it's also a pyramid. So the whole framework is the PLAN pyramid. So if you throw a triangle on the ground, okay, if we're just going to build this from scratch, if you throw a triangle on the ground, that's the foundation of our pyramid. It's really a tetrahedron, but whatever. And the base of it all is what matters in your season. I already talked about that. I already touched on that. What matters to you in your season right now, okay? Because if we try to make decisions about today based on this invisible future that's so far away that honestly, not to be a drag, but like we might not even get to, life is finite. Like we don't have a lot of control over what's going to happen. And so if we spend all of our days building to this thing this end that is kind of arbitrary and out of our control, there's a hollowness to those choices that we're making. So by making it smaller and naming, what do I need in the season that I'm in right now? We're more connected to the life we're living, to how we actually are managing our time, to the decisions that are in front of us, to the tasks that we're like, this is definitely good to do right now. This one can wait. This one I can delegate, whatever. So that's the base. What matters in our season? Then we're going to take equal triangles, the three sides of our pyramid, and they're going to kind of lean on each other equally. And those are the PAN, prepare, adjust, and notice. And then the point of the pyramid and of all of it is to live. The L is the point. So the important thing, there are two things that I really, really love about this framework. The first is that preparation is not the only thing, because the industry is like heavily leans on preparation. Like that's pretty much what they teach, is how to prepare, how to be prepared, how to make a plan and prepare. And it's like, dude, there's a lot happening that's going to mess up this plan, this preparation. Like I can't, hold on. And so then if our preparation does not go according to plan, and we hold that plan as sort of like the rule of all things, then we're going to feel like a failure. It's like, well, that didn't work and I did it wrong and I need to do it better next time, or whatever it is, as opposed to the adjust. Like, how about we learn to pivot a little bit? How about we look at what's going on and we have the freedom to adjust? Notice, are we noticing what's happening? Like, what's the energy in the room with these kids here? What's happening in my body? My stomach is feeling real weird. Is it because I'm feeling anxious about this situation and what's going on? Noticing, is this plan that I set up, is this going to work? It's like, it's being nimble, right? There's an awareness of not everything is going to be preparation. So what that does, what giving equal value and importance to preparation, adjusting, and noticing, what that does is it puts plans kind of in their proper place. It makes them not unimportant, but less important, less stressful, less significant in the scheme of things, right? It just takes the pressure off of your plans. And then the second thing it does, and this is my favorite, there are so many people who ask me all the time, Kendra, I'm just not organized. I'm not good at planning. Is this book even going to work? Like, I've just given up or whatever. And I get to say to them, all right, you might not be, what it sounds like is you're not naturally gifted at preparation, but I guarantee you are very gifted at either adjusting or noticing. And so what this framework, what this pyramid does is it expands the definition of what being a planner is. You can be good at planning and not own a planner because you are someone who is so observant. You're so aware of what's going on in the room. You're so wise, and you can notice this person in my family or me or this project. It's like, you know what? I don't think that we need to do that, because you're grounded in the moment more than someone who's geared towards preparation, who's like, follow the plan, stick to the plan. Like, we're like up in the air, high energy, caffeinated squirrel, going crazy. That person has a harder time noticing. Or if you're someone who is just really good at solving problems on the fly, right? You're like, everybody gets in the car late, or the deadline for a project at work that kind of gets moved, and you're like, oh no. And the planners, the preparers on your team are freaking out. And you're like, hey, it's chill. It's chill. All we have to do is this and this. And we're back on. We're back on track. That is just as valuable as preparing. So it expands the definition of what it means to be good at planning, because all three skills work together with equal importance and significance in tandem to live our lives. So I really like that we're shifting. I want to shift the normative definition of what it means to be good at planning. There's a lot more people who are good at planning than credit for.
Yes. Yeah. I definitely feel like I'm good at, having the standard productivity stance of, okay, let's begin with the end in mind. Let's project out what's my 5-year plan, in other words. And then what's the 10? And and we've done all that. We've done the horizons of 5, 10, whatever. We've looked out. We've done those things. But again, getting to that point means you have to survive, let alone, master to a certain extent, like you talked earlier. But it always comes. One of the things that I love talking about is just seasons. And I think this really just helps, because it's like, yeah, I can be somebody who can say, okay, I want things a certain way and I want to make the plan, but inevitably we always make changes to I don't know that there's ever a plan that gets executed the way it came out in the first place. And yet
not at all.
Our 2020 memory is hazy. So
yeah.
in remembering
that's why one of the things that I try to teach is learning to pivot is more important than learning to plan, like in the way that we think about planning, because the skill of pivoting is going to come into play a lot more than planning is. Like, there's just so many things that we need to pivot around, and rather than seeing that as like settling or some sort of like, oh, fine, like you're kind of patronizing yourself with the excuse of like, yeah, we had to change plans. Like, oh, well, like it's something to be celebrated, because it's something we all need to learn how to do. It's, you just said, that you can't think of many plans that stay as they are, And what if we looked at our plans with that expectation? What if we're like, yeah, this is probably going to change? There's just an open-handedness to it that's so life-giving. It makes the plan more fluid and work better because it's not so rigid and mechanical and dependent on this thing leading to that thing and that. Like I use this analogy in the book, but we've been taught that living our lives is like putting together a puzzle. You know, you have the picture on the box.
Yes.
And you'll match the picture on the box. And you got all your pieces, and this piece has one location, and that is it. And in many ways, while doing a puzzle, putting together a puzzle, like in reality, while the process is kind of fun, the satisfaction doesn't really, like the satisfaction comes when you like find the piece in the one spot and you're like, oh, there it is. I've been waiting for that piece. That's where it is. But really it's the end. When have you put together a puzzle and there's a piece missing and you want to burn your house down? It's like the worst feeling. You're like, oh, I didn't finish, because the finishing, the complete picture that matches the box is the ultimate goal. That is what time management currently teaches us. What I am saying, a different analogy, is what if we looked at life instead like we're painting? You can use 200 colors. You can use one. You can have one stroke. You can spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and tiny, tiny strokes. Like there's such a wide range of layers and fluidity. And the picture, you don't always know what the end result is going to be. You might have something in mind, but the end result might not exactly match and probably won't exactly match. It's not paint by numbers. It's responsive. Like that's what life is it's living responsively. It's noticing what you need. It's adjusting in the moment. It's changing your preparation just a little bit based on those things, all within the confines of your current season of life and what matters to you right now. There's so much alive there. There's so much alive. And so if we go in with that, that's the expectation, that we're not trying to match the picture on the box. When our plans don't work, we're like, well, I mean, yeah, I expected that. It's a deep breath. It's like such a relief in all of it. It puts it all in its context, its proper context.
Yeah. I was even thinking that maybe another metaphor, although again, none of them are perfect, but this is almost like, just expecting it's a road trip and there's going to be detours, and you won't know them. Just think of it as days before GPS. You get to them. I mean, remember when that used to happen? You didn't know there was a detour in 20 minutes. And
that's right.
And if you'd known, you would have taken a different way around. This actually literally happened to me about a week and a half ago. I was like going the right way, the fastest way, a roundabout to go to a friend's house. And because I went that way and didn't know there was a detour there, because I'm not using GPS in my hometown for any, I know the way to go, but if I had it on, it would have told me, don't go this way, go this other way. And I'm like, okay, great. But again, I just, I decided to roll with it, and I decided to just enjoy, it's going to take me south and I'm gonna have to go all the way around this other little town real quick. It's fine. It's just fine. Yeah. It doesn't matter. There was no rush. So yeah.
I think we have a built-in rush a lot of times.
Yes.
That's part of the greatness and the optimization is like, get it done as quickly as you can, get to where you're going as quickly as you can, accomplish your goal as quickly as you can. There's a rushing to all the things that I think we can, that keeps us from noticing. It keeps us from adjusting, and it puts a lot of pressure on our preparation. And again, keeps us from living as in the fullest way that we have available to us, and some things are good to rush. Some things we need a rush. Some things like take your time. The roundabout's okay. It's all right.
Obviously, then things still need to get done.
Yes,
but you're coming from you are here. You're coming from a different perspective. You're coming from a different starting point and a different perspective moving forward. But then it still means, okay, there's certain things that fit in the calendar at certain slots this week and next week. And I'm looking at the month, I'm looking at the quarter, I'm looking at today. It feels different, but how does it feel different? And how is that approach different? How is the to-do list different with this perspective?
Yeah. Well, perhaps many people listening to this we love the accomplishment of a to-do list. I do too. It is gratifying to check the things off and to get them done, because most likely the things on your list are important in some way, right? So we want to accomplish the things that matter and are important and necessary and all of that. So I have a to-do list and I love it. I think the difference is I used to make a list for, say, Monday. And if all of it didn't get done, like I just never really gave myself the freedom to be like, well, let's move these 3 things to Tuesday. Or actually, let's move them to Friday. Or you know what? I don't know why I wrote this down. This doesn't even matter. Let's let this go. Like that was not my posture. My posture was, this is what you are supposed to do, and you must do it. And if you do not do it, then today was a waste, or today was a failure, or you didn't. And people listening, you might not actually say that directly to yourself. You might be kinder to yourself than I. Sometimes it might not be that existential or whatever. But I do think that there's this low hum for a lot of us that when our lists are undone, we have a hard time resting. We have a hard time stopping. We have a hard time pivoting or kicking the can down the street. We see that as being lazy. We see that as not being disciplined enough or motivated enough or any of that. And I think the shift of how I start to see my tasks now, because I still have many things I need to get done every day, the shift becomes, well, I really do hope I get all this done. That's my intention, is to get all this done. But if I don't, there are still some things that are true. I'm fine. Everything's fine. Very likely nothing's going to burn down. And if something is that urgent, I'm going to do it. It goes to the top of the list, right? You sort of triage the things that are truly urgent. But what happens when you look through this lens of greatness, I've got to accomplish all of these things, is that you lose the ability. I think that's the way I want to say that. I think you lose the ability to recognize what is urgent and what is not. What is truly urgent here, because everything holds the same amount of urgency. And then when everything feels urgent, you just are sort of paralyzed and you can't get anything done. Also, let's talk about people who are neurodivergent, who actually they do not have the brain chemistry available, easily accessible to them to look at a list and intuitively name what is urgent. Everything feels urgent. So again, it's that narrow normative way that we look at organization and planning and checking off your to-do list. If you're like, I don't know what's urgent. I don't know. I need a different framework even to tell me what is urgent. So, and if you live in a culture where greatness and accomplishment and optimization are the key to success and all the happiness and all the things, then an undone checklist is weirdly heavy. It is so overwhelming. And then the undone things that do maybe get moved to the next day, it just feels like a constant pile on, and you're always behind. And without feeling like you have the permission to drop some things or do some things in a lazier way, or recognize that I don't have to push through. I need to sleep. That's actually going to make this list look differently in the morning, because I am so tired and I'm going to actually do a better job at this thing after I've slept for 7 hours. So I'm gonna go to bed. I'm gonna go to bed instead. That responsiveness through the lens of integration, through I'm going to honor myself as a person. I'm going to honor the energy in my home and the culture of my family. I'm going to not try to accomplish and check off these things at the expense of my own humanity. I'm not going to do that. That does not make you irresponsible. That does not mean you're not going to do anything. It actually, time and time again, it makes you do more from a more fulfilling place, because you're doing the things that matter. You have a different lens, and it helps you do the things that matter and not beat yourself up when you don't get the thing done. It's a whole paradigm shift.
You end up getting more done than you would have anyway. There's been this trend recently, I would say 5 years now, maybe a little more than that, where people would say, okay, what are your big three for the day? What are the three things you do today that if you did those, and there's some benefit to that, I think. It's scaling back. It's simplifying. You talk about that. But I think, okay, but I'm doing more than three things today. Yes. Well, okay. It's triage in a macro and micro sense, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I've just gotten into this habit now where I'm constantly looking at those kinds of things that are kind of commonplace in the time management spaces. Because I have a big three, I have a top three little like sticky pad that someone gave me. And I do use it occasionally. I'm like, actually, I can think of three really important things that if I can get those done today, that would be super rad. And so those are things that are, like you said, they're very valuable. But if we just take a pause and go, okay, am I looking at my top three, my big three, through a lens of greatness or through a lens of integration? Am I looking at it through the lens of, well, I better get these three things done today, or else, whatever the else is, or it's a waste of a day, or I haven't optimized the potential of today, or that's so much pressure. That's like that's a tightly wound to-do list, right? But if you look through those top three as, it really would kind of feel really good if I got these three things done, and I'm going to be with them, and I'm going to hustle in it, and because these things do matter to me. But if I don't get them done, or if I do the 5 things on the other list that didn't make it onto the top 3, that's also okay. Because it may be that I didn't have the time or the energy like I thought I would, because we had there was a water leak, or somebody, my father called and needed me to get something and couldn't get his TV to turn on, and I had to run over there and fix it. Or I had a boss that called an emergency meeting, or like there are things that are going to take away these chunks of energy and time that would have been spent on those big 3. And it's okay if you have to pivot to the little 5 or the little 1 or the nothing because you have a migraine and you have to like leave work and go to bed. Like, leave the humanity in it. Let's infuse our lists and our responses to them with the humanity of being a person. And so then it's the same thing. It just puts that big 3 in a different perspective when you notice what lens you're looking through.
So speaking of a different big 3, I'm thinking in terms of today, like a daily to-do list, a week, because I think we all kind of operate week to week. We'd like to be able to scope out a little further, and let's go there. Let's say a month. We're not going to even go to like a quarter because or annual goals. But what are those first 3? Like, how does this change the perspective of you literally and what you're talking to your listeners and the readers of the book in terms of planning that to-do list, and then also having those other components of adaptability and noticing when it comes to daily, weekly, and monthly? I think most of us don't go any further than that in terms of functionality.
Yeah. So the kind of the umbrella I would cast over all 3 of those to start is, what season are you in? You don't have to plan your season. You don't have to necessarily do that. But if you just name, all right, what's going on in my life right now? I need to be realistic. If you're feeling overwhelmed and kind of chaotic and having a hard time triaging, and it just feels, it's I call it big black trash bag energy, when you're just like, throw it all out, we got to start over. Whether it's getting a new planner, or you're literally like throwing out like all the toys in your house because your kids won't pick them up, or the number of times that I've said to my husband, I'm like, should we live in a tiny house? I can't handle it. Should we just sell this and go live in a tiny house, or get a trailer? Like, should we just do that? Drive around the country? Like, that's going to be easier somehow because it feels like it's less to manage. When we get to a place where we feel like there's too much to manage, we kind of panic a little bit and feel like we have to start over. And so rather than responding that way, part of the reason we do that is because we forget what season we're in, and we go, okay, the reason that everything feels so cluttered and dusty and just like right now in my house is not because I can't get it together. It's because we're having construction on a bathroom. and people are coming in and out of the house, and there is drywall dust everywhere, and things do smell like paint. And we've had the displacement of the stuff in that bathroom that's moved into the dining room. And then that displaced some of the stuff in the dining room into it's like the chaos, the dominoes of the chaos have happened. So rather than going like, I need to get it together, we need to get rid of everything, you go, we're in a season of a bathroom renovation. That's where we are. Okay. So we're going to look at the month and the week and the day. We're going to make sure we're keeping that in mind, that this is the season that we're in. Okay. And that shifts our expectations a little. That shifts what matters to us. You don't have to get rid of everything. You just have to wait until the season's over. Like, be patient. It's going to be okay. So that's the first thing I would say. And that's a Lazy Genius principle, is to live in your season. There are two other Lazy Genius principles that I think are important when you're looking at planning a day, planning a week, planning a month. Because I guarantee everybody listening, you've got like real great approaches, like legit strategies, helpful strategies that work for you. They do work in how you plan your day and your week and maybe even a month. But if your lens through which you're doing that planning is, well, I better get it right, or I got to get all this done, or all of this is, if I'm not checking off the boxes of this reverse engineered plan of how I'm supposed to accomplish all these things by this certain date, the heaviness is back. The heaviness is back. So the other two principles that I would encourage people to think about are start small, which is the most annoying of the 13 principles. She's so annoying. His really, please, can we start big? Can we do this big? Because big works, right? It doesn't. Big actually doesn't work. We think it does, but it doesn't. Smallness is not super fun because we don't see the results very quickly or even at all sometimes. But there is so much data. There's so many metaphors about this that when you start small, one small step, it is so valuable, and it's more doable. It's more accessible. It's more repeatable. Not to mention, small problems are easier to solve than big ones. If you're like, my life is so stressful right now, how do I fix it? I don't know. What are you talking about? That is so big. But instead, if you can make your problem smaller and you're like, all right, the thing that's actually like really, really stressing me out right now is that I've got 3 kids who are in 3 schools, and I feel like I'm always in the car, and no day is the same because of who I'm giving a ride to at any given time. That is smaller than my life is stressful, right? You can keep making that smaller until you actually have a solution to something, to that small problem, which kind of eases it. So starting small with your list, with your planning, with your approach is a beautiful mindset to have. So live in your season, start small. And then the third one is to be kind to yourself. I don't find in general that men struggle with this as much as women do. Not saying that men are like always super kind to themselves.
I'm going to be just flat out honest. I am often my boss, and even in the roles that I have that aren't a role that you'd have a boss in, I've still got the inner monologue going, and he is not kind very often.
He's not kind. So look at that. So and when we have that is so exhausting to just like carry around with us. It's just, mine is like right behind my right ear. Like I can just hear her. And she's like, no, you did that wrong. Or he did that wrong. You should go fix it. That's yours to fix. Or can you believe that part? Like there's just this constant narration, maybe not constant, but fairly regular narration of that's mean about how we're trying. Like I'm over here trying to make things better. We should be making things better. Like there's this teeth gritting to it, right? And so if we look at our planning with kindness, if we're kind to ourselves in it, and it's like, you know what? We're making this plan for today, and we hope it works. I hope it works. I hope it happens, because I'm excited about these things that matter, and I'm not looking forward to these things that are just like being adults. But it's got to get done, and we'll get it done, and it'll be fine. We'll watch a movie while we pay the bills or whatever. Like you can figure out the things. But if we go into it with kindness, if we value smallness in it, and if we're noticing what season we're in, our again, our to-do list, it relaxes. Our plans relax. The way we see our week relaxes. And I guarantee you that hardly anyone listening to this, that you need a new hack or strategy on how to plan a week. That's not what you need. That's not what you need. You already have those things. You have more than you need of those things. You need kindness. You need to value smallness and contentment, and you need to honor the season that you're in. That's what you need. Your plans, they look different when that is the energy that you bring into them. And I know that sounds like, I don't know, a little Pollyanna. I don't mind. I don't mind being that. But that is not what the industry teaches us we should bring into our planning. We need to bring mastery. We need to bring hustle. We need to bring optimization. That's what we need to bring into our plan to make it work. And I'm just here to tell you, you don't actually have to. You don't have to bring those things in. Bring kindness, smallness, and your season into your planning, and it changes your planning.
It's funny you mentioned Pollyanna, because I just remember watching that movie and thinking, okay, yeah, in the way that people have described it since all throughout adult life of, oh, that's Pollyanna, like everything's going to be okay. Nothing is wrong. She was actually pretty bold
She was bold.
She talked to adults in a, this is how it is and how it should be way.
I know. I love her so much.
That's tough. Now, she could have some maybe a little more tact. I don't know. It's been years since I've seen it. But
she totally could have more tact.
But she still was big and bold and like, this is right. And I'm going to say something kind of. So anyway, when people say that sometimes, this is the first time I've ever said this actually. But it made me think of what you said earlier. And when we're talking about the end of the book is all about pep talk. So as we're kind of wrapping up here, I thought, let's go into that a little bit. Let's be Pollyanna in the best sense. And let's do it. I think we've kind of done it all along the way, but like, let's close this out with some pep talk here.
Yeah. It's funny. I sometimes call myself Pollyanna with a clipboard. I'm like, I have that idealism in me. And also like, let's roll. We got a way that we can look at this. So, okay, here we go. We have sort of been conditioned to look at the chaos and the overwhelm and the stress and the fullness of life as something to wrangle, as something to remove. And I think that if we instead sort of step back and look at life as like, I'm not here to be stress-free. Life is not going to be easy all the time. It's not that I'm never going to be overwhelmed or like look at my list and go, holy moly, that is too much to do right now. Or that you're so fragmented and pulled in so many directions that you just sit down and you're like, oh, I can't do any of it. I don't even know. Like that is so normal. That is often life. And if we keep looking at our chaos and our overwhelm and our long checklists as a problem to fix rather than the life we're living. And if we look at it as, well, how can I figure out a better system to remove the overwhelm? You're going to lose the living altogether. You're trying to mechanize your life in a way that it really wasn't meant to be. And so my kind of like summation here in the pep talk, I'm not trying to promise that like life is going to be easy and you're not going to have any problems ever again. You're going to be able to complete every checklist you ever make for the rest of your life. That is so untrue. But in the same way that we sort of shift our expectations of plans to be like, hey, this is probably not going to work the way I wrote it down. And that's okay. We can shift our expectations about our lives and go, I'm not trying to make this seamless, no friction, easy, a machine that we built and we press a red start button and it hums forever. That's not what life is. So if we change our expectation of what life is, when we're in the chaos, we're not undone by it in the same way because it's part of it. It's part of life. And we are honoring our ability to pivot. we're solving tiny problems. We're being kind in that moment. We're naming the season we're in and honoring that season and saying, well, this is what matters right now. And this other thing doesn't. So it's okay that we're going to let this thing go. That's okay. That's good. That's wise. That's wise. So that is my final, that's sort of my final summation of this, is living in overwhelm with kindness and not trying to eliminate it at every turn is such wisdom. There's so much wisdom there. It's very human. It's honoring to your humanity and to your soul. And it doesn't exclude your ability to get your stuff done. It actually empowers you in a new, fulfilling way to get what matters done. And I feel, this is when I really do feel like Pollyanna. I'm just like, if we would all live this way, the world would be a better place.
Oh, well, that was a great pep talk. And I'm so glad to have had you come back. You know what? I want you to, okay. So the verdict is, maybe there's more books, maybe there's not, but either way, I want you to come back again at some point here.
Thanks.
So we'll plan. I know you're super busy though, but I love that you've done this. I love that you've come out with this, and it's perfect timing. The book's out now, and I'm glad to push this for people to kind of, hey, find some quiet time. Try to find some quiet time, I should say, in the next couple of weeks, couple of months, as you know, as holiday things are happening and all the things are happening. Yeah. Steal away some time, sit down and read and enjoy this and really change this perspective. Even if you're not making any changes yet, thinking in terms of that January, February timeframe, because you don't have to change anything in January. Do it in February. Who cares?
That's right. You don't have to change anything at all. You may look at your life and go, you know what? I'm actually pretty content with this. This is crazy, but I feel pretty content with this. That's a beautiful thing to walk away with.
Yeah. So, but I want to point people to where they can find out more about the book and you and the show. And again, I'm going to say this, congratulations on joining up with the Office Ladies podcast. Very cool news there.
Yeah, thank you. That is fun. Yeah, everything is at the lazygeniuscollective.com. So there's a book page with information about all 3 books. There are links to the podcast episodes. We have an episode every Monday that comes out. You can, sign up for the newsletter. There's products. Everything is right there. So the lazygeniuscollective.com.
Perfect. Kendra, so great to see you again, and can't wait to have you back sometime very soon.
Thanks, Erik. It's nice to be here.
Well, that's another podcast crossed off your listening to-do list. I hope that you enjoyed this conversation with Kendra Adachi. I love having her on the show. This is the second time she's been on. I know it's not the last. And I really hope that you're taking this in as you are entering into a new year, possibly for yourself, whenever you start your year, I guess. Keeping in mind the perspective of seasons, but also the plan and how that will let you get more done or less done. And either way, it's okay. You don't have to constantly be tweaking and optimizing. If you enjoyed this conversation, I would love for you to do me a favor and share this episode with somebody you know needs to hear it. Hit that share button wherever you're listening to this. Send it on over to them. Let them know you were thinking of them. Thank you so much for sharing. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next episode.